We are recording live at Balticon 42 with art guest of honor John Jude Palencar. How are you doing this morning, sir?
I'm fine. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we appreciate you coming all the way out here and being our guest of honor.
Yeah, I was looking around when they were setting up the convention, and it looks like quite a production here. They were doing the stage rigging, and the art show crew is getting everything in place there. So it's really quite impressive.
We have a small army of dedicated fans that come out and do all of this stuff just to have a really good party.
Mm-hmm.
So we're glad you could come and party with us.
Yeah, I hope to do some of that too.
I want to start off by asking you how you got started being an artist.
It's kind of one of the stereotypical tales that I've been drawing since I was a kid, and always had done a fairly good job in art. And music was my other love, but I found out that I was a better artist than a musician. So I chose that path. I had an exceptional high school art teacher who was a practicing artist, and took me under his wing, and I started winning awards and selling paintings, and I said, geez, can I make a living at this? And coming from Ohio, there's a very Midwest mentality that happens somewhere else, at least in the area that I lived, which is kind of maybe blue-collar, working class a neighborhood. And he gave me the hope that I could make a living in art. I didn't know at the time I was going into illustration. I knew I wanted to be something involved, was going to be something involved in art. So. Excellent.
So did you have to move somewhere else to actually find that job?
No. I tried to bring them around, actually. We didn't have the luxury of, my father working there, of course, in Cleveland, and we lived out in the suburbs. I had originally grown up on my formative years, early years were spent on the near west side of Cleveland, which was at the time divided into a number of ethnic neighborhoods. We lived next to the Germans and Italians, and I was in the Czech-Slovak area. And so I could go down to, Abraham's Deli, and they knew whose grandchild I was or son. And so it was kind of it's like the Dead End Kids, almost kind of like a Little Rascals kind of environment that I had in the early years before we moved out to the suburbs. So I didn't have to bring anybody around to that way of thinking. I just kind of did what I did. And it's funny because I could pretty much live anywhere else, but I've chosen to stay in Ohio, and I kind of like it that way. And then I go out and have my adventures. Ohio can sometimes be, I don't want to say a boring place, but out of the mainstream, I guess, from the trendy coast, and yet I can still travel to either coast and get some of my excitement. But then I can go in Ohio, I can go inward and create my imaginative worlds, or get my release that way creatively.
Excellent. Much of your professional work seems to be for horror novels. Is that your preferred subject matter? Are you a fan of horror?
Oh yeah, I love horror. There's not enough of it, in my opinion, being done, and it's somewhat of the aside from Stephen King and some of the larger authors, it's somewhat of the bastard stepchild of the genres, I guess you could say, and it's never had as big of a following, say, as science fiction or fantasy. So I love doing horror. Although I do like working in all the other genres. I mean, I've done Tolkien, and the Christopher Paolini Aragon novels have taken off all over the world, and so that's refreshing. I do like some of the new, like the magic realism that came out years ago, and Connie Willis, who's the writer guest of honor at this convention, is really known for that kind of magic, and that she comes in from, and there are a number of other authors that I would like to do covers for, but I think in my earliest memories, actually, the thing that started me drawing almost in a therapeutic way was seeing Jason and the Argonauts, for example, with the skeletons armed with shields and swords, and as a kid I was thinking, but how can you kill them? You can't. They have, they jumped in the water at the end, and Then mistakenly walking into our living room when the movie Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte was on, and there was a scene where a man gets his hand chopped off with a cleaver. And then, of course, there were the early Twilight Zones and Outer Limits that were, and later on, Night Gallery, that were a big influence on my early work. And that really started it out. And then actually in high school, I was doing more landscapes and still lifes and limited figure work. And then gradually developed, working more figuratively in college. But so that was... Horror was the seed that started all of it, and then alternate worlds, alternate realities, and things came in later.
You've done a lot of cover art for books and magazines. Do you typically read the book or the magazine issue before doing the art, or is there some other process?
If I have time, I always like to read the manuscript. Most of the time, regrettably, I don't. So what I try to do, I try to find out either from the art director, maybe a brief note from the editor what the book is about. Sometimes they send me a synopsis, the author's outline, or a few chapters of the book. And then I'll try to distill something, get the essence of what the book is about. I never really like doing narrative covers, or what I call kitchen sink covers, where they... the editor loves the book so much that the cover has to have this in it. It has to have that. I think the best way, what I call kind of the Hitchcock approach, Alfred Hitchcock, is instead of sometimes showing what's on the other side of the door, just showing the door or the doorknob turning, and distilling the book down to maybe a few symbols, maybe something that's a little bit allegorical. And a lot of times I'll read the book and I almost want to go in the other direction. I want the art also to stand by itself. And I want to create an image that has a sense of mystery. I'd rather have somebody look at a cover and have the viewer ask questions about the cover, like what's going on there, rather than telling them and drawing them into the book that way. And then sometimes doing book covers is kind of like when they do a movie. You have, people say, well, the book is the movie is just not like the book, and they have this set of things, or elements, or images in their mind what they think the movie should look like, and it usually never measures up. So I in one way try to do the same thing where I move into what I think the book needs on the cover, and just keep it simple and keep it symbolic, and hopefully that it creates questions, ask questions, rather than broadcast or tell somebody what the book is about. And I think that mystery is an alluring thing. There is one of my axioms or sayings that Albert Einstein said was the most beautiful thing that we can experience is the mysterious. And I think that says it all for not only science and physics, but it also goes for music, and it goes for art. I think that allure, that unknown, is always something that tickles a part of our brain that gets us to investigate and go through our own self-exploration and interpretation of what we think the book should be.
Do you find that approach makes you popular with the art directors, the people that buy the art, or
I don't know. I kind of just do what I do, and I'm really appreciative and feel very blessed that people like the work. And it's also not sense of just doing covers, but working with some of the people I've worked with for over 25 years, and it's a joy. I mean, everything can become a job, and you can get complacent, and I still go through that, and then you have to kick yourself and say, look what I do for a living. And even though I've pulled it, I still, I'm 51, and I still pull all-nighters, and I thought those were long done in college where you stay up all night and work on something. I still stay up all night. I still have my FedEx guy knows when I've had a rough night and I've been up the whole night through the next day. I'm always behind on my work, which I have very understanding art directors and editors and publishers. And but I just feel very fortunate doing what I'm doing. When I was telling somebody earlier here today about when I am up all night and I see that long line of traffic of people going into and I'm watching the traffic report in the morning, I really do feel very fortunate that I don't have to sit in that, and I can, I have a separate building for a studio, and I can it's out in the woods, and I can kind of wander out in nature and take a break and walk outside if I'm not on a real, hot deadline. So, and sometimes I procrastinate. I'm also guilty of that. And it's once I get going that I'm in the starting blocks, and I can be a little jittery, waiting for that starting gun, just get all the material in place and the inspiration. Because I've done this so much, I know what I'm up against and what I have to cover. And since I paint in somewhat of a detailed fashion, and how my technique is kind of based on old egg temper techniques. I know what I'm up against, so you have to kind of prepare yourself for the long haul and what the challenges are in the image that you're trying to create.
So, following on with the technique that you use, and I'm not sure if I'm using the right word here, but it seems like your color palette is very washed out by comparison to other artists. Last year we had Joe Bergeron, and his stuff is very vivid. Lots of bright reds, greens, blues, and your stuff is I don't know if washed out is the right word, but and you use it very, very effectively. I'm just wondering how you develop that style.
I've always value light and dark as kind of what it's the term for it that artists use. I've always liked things that are based on light and dark, even from some of the abstract painters like Motherwell and a few others that work that way. But I liked the movie Citizen Kane, and when they said they were going to colorize it, I just thought, oh my God, But I want to be more subtle, and that's part of that mystery thing. I think if you took a foggy scene and injected it with a bunch of blue and purple, it somehow becomes something different. And it's more along the lines of thinking, there's a lot of color in the natural world, but there's also a lot of subtle grays and things that are in between. And I just think it's a matter of what the artist's sensibility is, and what direction they want to go in their work. I was never one for injecting an image with a lot of testosterone, I guess you could say. Or a lot of the pulp artists do this, or when you look back at early comics, you have the warm light and the cool light. You have really vibrant red-orange light, and then you have a blue reflective light coming in. And that's a matter of attracting the eye or hyping the image. I'm not one for hyping images. I think things need to be subtle and mysterious. Even a lot of the music I like, or say even the foods I eat, are kind of like that. It's very subtle seasoning of things. And they may seem subtle, as you called it, wash out. There is actually a lot of color in it, but it's very, very subtle. If you put one of these paintings into Photoshop and crank the color, you could see the components of color. Of course, that's not the way I intend it to be seen, but it's all about subtlety. I think it's about nuance, and I think the music, like I said, the music I like has a lot of nuance and subtlety in it, and then sometimes big, bold areas, and these would be, these masses of light and dark, and then the intricacies of value change. And it's just something that came more naturally to me. I'm more for letting what you do as an artist come out and setting your direction that way, and you'll find your way, and without trying, you'll create your own look in your art, and mine just happens to be something that's based on subtlety, the more subtle color and value.
Excellent. Well, we're going to take a break right now, and we will be right back with more from John Jude Palencar. And we are back with Balticon 42 Art Guest of Honor, John Jude Palencar. And, sir, you have recently been named the ongoing artist in residence of County Kerry in Ireland. And I checked your website, and there's a section for Ireland that says, coming soon.
It's been that way for months.
And I'm just wondering, what does it entail to be the ongoing artist in residence?
Well, I think it may be making it more than it is. I don't know if you'd call it an ongoing kind of artist residence for the entire County Kerry. There are many, many artists that are there. I had the opportunity, they gave me that title at a philanthropist, woman by the name of Noelle Campbell-Sharp, bought a 17th century pre-famine village. And at the time, there was still one resident living in this village. And very respectfully, she approached this woman and told her what she wanted to do to create an international artist retreat for artists all over the world that could come there and work for free. And the woman consented to moving out. She built the woman a new house within sight on one of the other peninsulas in Ireland. The studios are right on the windy cliffs and mountains of Ballinskelligs Bay in County Kerry, out on the Iveragh Peninsula. And through a series of very odd events, I had a show in Oberlin, Ohio, at the Firelands Association of the Visual Arts. A noted designer by the name of Carlton Varney came in there. He eventually came over to the studio and met with me and said, I think you would enjoy this thing in Ireland. And a couple weeks later, I got a letter asking me to, the first time that we had gone to Ireland, inviting me to work at this the studio. I didn't know exactly what it entailed. I packed up my whole family. We went there for a month. We didn't know what we were getting into, and it ended up being an extremely magical time. The village was beautiful, and in fact, we didn't know where we were going, and it just happened that year that we were getting subscriptions to Architectural Digest, and here in an issue of Architectural Digest was this philanthropist woman. She used to be a major publisher in Ireland, kind of the Irish equivalent of Malcolm Forbes. And here was a shot of her beautiful house, which I was later to have dinner in, and the studio that I was going to get to work in. So this happened a couple months before we left for Ireland. We left for Ireland, did some paintings there. The way it works, you don't have to. You can donate the paintings to the retreat, and they use the money from the proceeds of the sales of the paintings to help. Now it's actually, the village has been pretty much restored. Some of it is intentionally left in ruins, and there are 6 cottages for artists to work in from all over the world. They work for free. Like I said, you can donate your work. And I've been subsequently asked back, another time, and I'm waiting for the next invite. There is a application list of 15,000 applications of artists all over the world that have applied. So to be selected, and because of the show I had in Oberlin, Ohio, and the recommendation of Carlton Varney, I kind of got bumped way ahead in line. And so on the first visit there, I was mentioning to somebody here at the convention that little did I know 2 weeks later that they had a special show of some of the artists' work at the retreat. At the time, there were only 2 cottages open, another artist from Colombia and myself. And we were showing, our work was shown at a special show that they had at the National Museum in Dublin. The painting sold within the first hour of the opening. I had Irish TV in there, and it was really a big to-do, and it was... so we always have a fond spot in our heart for Ireland.
Excellent. And did you find that working there took your art down a different path, or made it easier, or affected you? No,
it enhanced it. I always thought, because I'm on both sides of the fence on there. Some of the fine artists will look down at me as a mere illustrator, and then I have kind of the gallery fine art side going, and right now I'm in a development mode on that. I was involved with a gallery for a time in New York City, down in Soho, and I forgot your question.
Oh, how did working in Ireland
it
enhance your art?
Working in Ireland really enhanced my work. There's that sense of mystery that I'm talking about, and it's a magical place, and the people really don't realize that. I think witchcraft actually started. Some of the old pagan religions are still about in Ireland. They're still floating around the hillsides, and there's many myths and legends that are there that you can hear the locals tell, and the changing climate and the clouds in the mountains, and you can go through all 4 seasons just about in one day in Ireland. And a short walk from the studio, there are ancient sites that you can wander into, a 12th century monk's graveyard, or maybe even a 2nd century monk's graveyard. Out on one of the peninsulas, there are 2 islands located off the coast called the Skelligs, Skellig Michael, which is called the Great Skellig, and the other, for all lack of a better word, the other one's called the Small Skellig, which is actually a bird sanctuary with hundreds of thousands of birds that have turned the rocks white from their droppings. But on the large Skellig are ancient stone huts that were made, constructed by monks that had lived there that tried to emulate the apostles, and how they ever got out on this rock and even survived just a simple landing on the rocks. And I know when we went there was a woman that actually was tragically killed getting off the boat, and I had hired a boat captain to take me out there to paint a few of these ruins that are out there, because they're beautiful dry stone construction beehive huts. And so I just can't say enough about it. You have to experience Ireland. I can talk for the next hour on Ireland. You really have to go there. You have to experience the Irish hospitality. If they like you, you can, and it's not even if they're very friendly people. They've had people invading their land for thousands of years. You have the Vikings coming down, and then you have the English. And so they're very, very accommodating. And I, saw all stratas of society while I was there. And I gave an old man a ride on the road. They're still hitchhiking there without fear of being killed by a serial killer. And but I gave an old man a ride out to his beautiful little kind of charming stone cottage, and he invited me in for a drink. And you get that kind of hospitality. This is the first time I've met this man, and other times we kind of hung out with the leaders of major corporations there and ambassadors from different countries, and it seems to be just this kind of one of my magical spots on the earth. I think a lot of artists go to different places, and going to Ireland these couple times here has been really you feel like you're at home, at least for me when I've been there. And the pub life is another thing, that's
the live music at night.
Yeah, the pubs there are different. They're very family oriented. You can go one night and you'll have a cover band doing Duran Duran in a big stage out in back of the in the pub, and then you can go in there the next night and there'll be traditional Irish dancing and somebody on Irish pipes, and people sitting around playing cards, gambling with money, stacks of money on the table with cards. Now they couldn't do that in the States because the bar would be closed down for having gambling. It was a much easier going way of life. It reminds me kind of America back in the 60s, where things were a little bit lighter and not so politically correct. People kind of just did what they did and were left alone, so there's an ease of life there.
Well, I hope you get a chance to go back soon. Do you have any advice for anyone who's looking to get into the business of doing cover art?
No, it's I wanted to do book covers. About my second or third year in art school, I went to the Columbus College of Art and Design. I decided this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that couldn't be filmed. And now, of course, with the advent of doing these beautiful movies that are loaded with CGI and sort. So I directed my portfolio kind of in that direction. I still want to paint. My dream is still to paint my paintings, and I'm kind of doing that a little bit, but I haven't really committed to that direction. If I had any advice for students, is to really do what you want to do and do it for the love of doing it, and then try to get your work out. There's a number of avenues that you can promote your work. If you're in art school, in a registered art school across this country, there's a competition that the Society of Illustrators holds, the student competition, and it's actually extremely high quality work. It's very hard for students to get in. In fact, I think it's even harder for a student to get a piece of that show than it is for the professional version of that same show. And that's how I kind of came up in the business, is that I had work in a number of the student shows there. It culminated in the last year, my senior year. I won, at the time, was the top cash award, and then also received a scholarship to study in Paris, France, with the top 7 illustrators that were in the country at the time. And through being in that show and the workshop, I started getting my first offers out of New York. They were from major publishers, so I knew that it wasn't some seedy businessman that was going to rip me off. And one client became two covers became four, and I like having fun when I work with people. I think I make it about, and it helps me be a little bit to be easygoing, and because it can be a little stressful doing an assignment for a cover and doing something when you're an artist on your own or in art school. There's a different dynamic there. And so, like I said, from the Society of Illustrators student competition and starting to get my work accepted in some of the professional annuals that are out there that are available for all artists and illustrators to enter. Your work gets seen by people who need this art. I mean, they need art for covers, and some of my covers have been out there for quite a few years, which is very flattering because I know, as coming up in the business, I still do to this day. We'll do a repackage, which is a new cover, a fresh cover for an existing work that has been out there by an author for a number of years, and they want to give it a different look. And I've had authors write me and thank me for introducing their work to a new audience, because having different cover art on the book will draw in a different audience sometimes. So you can reintroduce an author's work, and it helps them out, and you have the assignment in a printed piece. So but just whatever you do it with passion and do what you want to do. That's what I'd say to any art student, and everything will follow. It's like you build it and they will come. If I can sense when an art student has done something and really has the love of doing it, and it's done in a certain quality. There's a certain passion that does come through. It's one of those. Maybe it's not intangible, because to me it's very physical. I can size up a work in a few seconds and know if this person is on the right track, if they're not painting scared, if they're painting with passion and confidence. You can sense it. And in this day and age, there are so many styles accepted and put on book covers. It doesn't have to be what the status quo is. You could create your own language, your own voice in your own work. So, and it can be discouraging, but you have to work through the discouragement. You have to almost be dumb enough to keep in pursuit of your goal and your dream. But if you hang in there long enough, the longer you're in it, the longer that you'll probably survive in the business. You just have to, like I said, be very tenacious and work through the highs and lows that every business has. And art is a business. I don't care if you're doing gallery work or if you're doing illustration. It comes down to, it's a business. The people who cover furniture and cheese still want to, they can still sometimes make a living at their artwork. Maybe some of them don't care, but the gallery owners that provide those spaces, they have to pay their rent. So.
Excellent. And one of the things that we haven't talked about that I didn't even know about before you came in here was that you're very into making your own music.
Yeah, and it will be kept quiet from the public. I do. Since it was music and art in high school, I've always had a love of music. And it's funny because I'm a traditionalist when it comes to doing paintings. I'm not anti-digital, but I think there's a character that you develop as an artist to working with real paint and the materials that are the heritage of your craft. And when it comes to music, however, I total digital, into keyboards and synths and emulations and virtual instruments and digital recording, and I'm still learning on that. I love soundtrack work. In fact, when I work in my studio, I have, Hans Zimmer and James Howard Newton. I can't remember his name, and Klaus Belder from the Pirates of the Caribbean. So I have all this music playing. It almost kind of it inspires me when I hear it. Music from K-Pax and all these soundtracks. And I got into early electronic music years ago, just being a fan of it. I'm kind of the equivalent how some people here are with science fiction and fantasy. I'm kind of that equivalent in music. Used to hang out at a keyboard store in Cleveland, and people with Steve Cox, who is a member of the Daz Band, who they've won a couple of Grammys, and also Trent Reznor, who of Nine Inch Nails, worked there along with my friend Frank Vale, who's owner of one of the largest studios in Cleveland. They have now all gone on to these really neat careers, And so I would always, it was at the cutting edge of all the electronic music. And I do it as I can sit down there just like I can sit at the, in fact, my wife yells at me, come up out of that studio. I can sit for hours and just try to practice the craft of just even playing the keyboard, because I played trumpet in school. So being self-taught on keyboard is a whole nother adventure. And I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy almost the the godlike power you have with creating some of the sounds that you can get out of these instruments, and they're getting so sophisticated nowadays. The ability to get the nuance into a piece of music is really quite impressive. So that's my other sidelight. I think most artists I know have a second thing that they kind of do, whether it's music or they collect something or they have. Maybe they want to be a writer, they have aspirations to be a writer too. There's always seems to be a secondary interest that fuels their primary career or interest.
That's great. Yeah. Now, before we go, where can people who are interested in your work see it?
Well, you can go to just about any bookstore around the country, or actually around the world, because I've sold books in over 32 countries. With my cover on it. They can go to www.johnjudepalencar.com, and if you can order it, or if you walk into any Barnes & Noble or Borders, you might be able to pick up a copy of my book. It's called Origins, The Art of John Jude Palencar, with a foreword by Christopher Paolini, and additional editing and thoughts by Arnie Fenner, who runs the Spectrum line of annuals, and Kathy Fenner, through the sweetheart of a publisher, Tim Underwood from Underwood Books, puts that out. And so that kind of has an overview of about 20 years worth of work. And hopefully if that does well, we'll have a volume 2 come out.
Excellent. Well, I wish you luck with that. And thank you very much for being on the Balticon podcast and for coming to Balticon.
No, thank you very much for having me.